Well, WandaVision reignited my passion for guessing what the hell was going to happen next in the MCU, and then immediately started shitting on me for wanting to guess at what happens next, but we'll get to that. If it isn't pretty obvious from the title, we're going to be cooking up theories today with spoilers for the entirety of WandaVision. I'm talking about both post-credit scenes, folks. They had two. That's platinum level. So get out of here, you shitters that haven't been screaming at your television violently at the words, "Please stand by," every week for months, because you need to finish watching that before watching this. So, some MCU films are space operas, some are mystical realm adventures, and some are heist movies. But with the advent of Disney Plus, the MCU has been able to make WandaVision their first cock tease. I mean sitcom! Seriously though, what they did here was something that I personally loved, and I think both the format and content of this first foray into Phase 4 is better for the MCU as a whole than Black Widow will be. Not that I'm not hyped for Natasha to finally get some solo spotlight. It's just not going to focus too much on the future of the MCU, is it? And I feel like we need to be doing that right now because they literally just reached their end game and need to show us how they're proceeding to do bigger and better things in the future, not reminiscing about dead characters that aren't going anywhere. We presume. Who knows? She might be alive. She's not, I think. So let's begin by talking about this title. Now, obviously, I'm talking about Monica Rambeau, okay? As much as there is only wildly speculative reasons for supposing that she could be the first Marvel Cinematic Universe mutant, I think she is, and I think there's a whole lot of meaning behind that possibility and everything else we've seen over the course of WandaVision, so let's have a little chat about that. In WandaVision Episode 7, Monica was warned by Dr. Darcy Lewis, that if she travelled through the Hex a third time and it altered her body's chemistry again, there's really no telling what would happen to her. Fortunately, nothing really happened. Nothing that hasn't happened to a majority of MCU characters to date. She gained powers alright, and we saw those in action in the WandaVision finale. If you're confused as to the nature of the powers, it looks pretty much to be her power set from comics, which was the ability to transform her body into any type of energy on the electromagnetic spectrum. Basically, she can control gamma rays, microwaves, radio waves, etc. Now, when you think about this and actually put your physics lessons to good use, you realize the capabilities this gives her. It's obviously she can fly, she can control and bend light to make herself invisible or appear to be anybody else, though the fine details of that will probably take some training. She's got superhuman speed, can phase through solid matter, can absorb energy or fire energy blasts. Her body is pure energy. So Wanda and her Hex, her magic in general even, are capable not only of a pretty huge range of things, she can also alter the physical chemistry of other people in order to, say, unlock potential that is already in their DNA and move them along to a more advanced stage of humanity, something that Magneto in the comics might well have called Homo Superior. That's right, folks. And that was always the initial idea behind the X-Men. We can't really count Monica as inhuman in the MCU, or at least what was canon before the Darkhold and WandaVision really started making Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all other previous MCU shows feel like a lame duck. The Inhumans were created by Kree technology exclusively. You could pretty much call Captain Marvel in the MCU an Inhuman if any of that was canon. I have no idea whether or not it is, honestly. But I really don't see how Monica could be called one. In the comics, Monica Rambeau was bombarded by extra-dimensional energy that came from a machine created by an evil scientist. She went on to be known as Captain Marvel for a while, and later Photon, Pulsar, and Spectrum. She was mostly associated with the Avengers over the X-Men or Inhumans or anybody else, and as such, it would be a pretty strange thing if the MCU chose to introduce her as a mutant before Professor X, Wolverine, Rogue, Glob Herman. Wait, what the fuck is that? Point is, it's an unusual first step in that direction. So what makes us, and by us I mean me, it's only me that thinks this, that Monica's transformation is going to be similar to that of the people destined to become X-Men in the MCU? Well, there's only a couple of ways to introduce the X-Men, okay? It's the Fantastic Four that are getting the fast-tracking. Whether or not Reed Richards is the aerospace engineer that Monica knows, there's a Fantastic Four film set for 2023. They could either already be normal people in the MCU waiting for, oh, that's right, a huge blast of interdimensional energies to bombard their bodies. That's their origin as well, isn't it? Or, and this is a possibility, they could be from another dimension. The multiverse is opening up, guys. It's likely to feature in Spider-Man No Way Home. It's certain to feature in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, right there in the title. So the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, for that matter, could be jetting in from another Earth entirely. I don't like that. I think it results in the X-Men staying on their Earth the majority of the time, and only becoming involved in the main universe when there's serious shenanigans. While that helps separate the MCU constituent parts, that also helps separate the MCU constituent parts. It's a positive and a negative. And for me, you know, you think about the comics. Black Panther and Storm were married. X-Men often cross into Avengers teams and back and forth. Personally, I just want all the characters that are important to the universe to be in the same dimension. Obviously, Loki's new show is already set to mess that up a little bit by introducing an alternate timeline, but let's leave that for future theory videos, yeah. Let's assume that the X-Men in all their MCU films aren't going to be set on another Earth. In my mind, that only leaves 4 options for how they can be introduced at some point in the next couple of years. Option 1 is that one of the properties that's going to deal with alternative dimensions and Earths does run across another dimension where the X-Men already exists, and whoops, merges the dimensions somehow? This sounds dumb, but it isn't unheard of in the realm of comic books. It sounds more DC than Marvel, honestly, but let's put a pin in that and hope the confusing mess that would be doesn't come to pass, since there's already, because of the films, been a major shake-up with the blip that changes the Earth forever. It would be really weird if they did another one in the next couple of years to introduce the X-Men from another dimension. Second option. Could the X-Men be created by some interdimensional blast of energy that is likely needed to create the Fantastic Four in the next couple of years? I'd personally imagine that could well be seen in Captain Marvel 2, Doctor Strange 2, or possibly not until the Fantastic Four film itself. Frankly, this seems unlikely as well, since that would canonically make the Fantastic Four mutants, which has never been considered the case in the comics, and how would a large number of people from different parts of the world be hit with this same energy, when it's likely the Fantastic Four are going to be hit with it, in space or something? I don't think this theory works out at all. There are only 2 other options. The first proves me correct. Wanda Maximoff is now the Scarlet Witch. She is learning how to utilize her incredible powers. Could those powers, a blending of her original magical abilities and Infinity Stone strength, create more mutants in Doctor Strange 2 through some reverse House of M shenanigans? As if we didn't already know, the Scarlet Witch is one of the strongest beings in the Marvel Universe, and in a 2005 storyline called House of M, she used her power to wipe out the powers of most of the mutants in the Marvel Universe. So, will Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness deal with a storyline similar to House of M? Here's why I think it will. Firstly, there's everything in the comics leading up to House of M and the madness that gripped Scarlet Witch in that. Wanda and Vision had twin boys named Billy and Tommy, and the government agencies had dismantled Vision's body, then put it back together, only now it was chalk white in colour. Agatha Harkness, witch extraordinaire, turned up and revealed to Wanda that her children weren't real but constructs of her magic, with their souls just being pieces of Demon Lord Mephisto. This is pretty much why everybody thought that some character in WandaVision would be revealed as Mephisto eventually. After losing the children, Mephisto reabsorbs their souls. Wanda has a few cuckoo moments, studies magic further, and tries to reconnect with the new Vision, only to discover he lacks the emotions of his other self. There are some more shenanigans between these events in House of M, but by the time it comes around, she has had her memories of her kids erased and then remembered them again, so she's still mad with grief at the loss of them and her Vision, putting her in pretty much the same spot that Wanda is in at the end of WandaVision. She's in this isolated place, she's mad with grief, learning about all these dark ideas and methods for nasty things from the Darkhold, and in the second post-credits scene at the end of episode 9, she hears her boys calling out to her. Either she's gone totally insane thinking she can hear them in her mind, or she's hearing him call from an alternate dimension that she is slowly reaching out to, opening up the multiverse for the Doctor Strange sequel she just happens to be on the cast list for. In my mind, since Doctor Strange himself is scheduled, surprisingly, for a Spider-Man No Way Home cameo, we're going to see some version of Spider-Verse occurring as the first MCU multiverse story, okay? We know that we've got Jamie Foxx and Electro from the Amazing Spider-Man films, and Alfred Molina as Doc Ock from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films on the cast list. Those 2 are confirmed. Who else? Who knows? But I really think that to some degree, we're getting a Spider-Verse story. There's going to be multiverse shenanigans in it. There really doesn't make much sense for a Doctor Strange cameo otherwise. And I think that Doctor Strange cameo is so Big Sorcerer Supreme Boss Man could come in and put a stop to whatever alternate dimension shenanigans are going on. But I think that Wanda will be behind opening up these alternate dimensions in Spider-Man No Way Home. I think the Spider-Man No Way Home post-credit scene, or at least one of them, could be another one that needs multiple, is going to feature Doctor Strange going and speaking to Wanda about this, finding the source of these alternate dimensions being opened up. And I think it's just going to get worse from there, and that leads into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Therefore, I think his second film could include multiverse in the title, because Wanda, filled with grief, in a very bad place, possibly being fueled by extra power from Mephisto or Nightmare, rumoured villains for Doctor Strange 2, creates an alternate timeline like she did in the House of M storyline, where, well, in the comic books, Magneto and a ruling class of mutants were in charge of the planet over humans. At the end of the story, racked with further grief, she makes the infamous statement, "No more mutants," and most of the Marvel Universe mutants lost their powers. If Wanda is creating alternate dimensions and doing this kind of insane next level of power beyond what she even managed in WandaVision kind of thing, then what if hundreds, thousands of people are bombarded with energy from her powers across the world, like a lot of people were in WandaVision, and they unlock genes in their DNA that transform them into mutants, creating the X-Men franchise? If so, wasn't Monica Rambeau the first one? Now that's all very well and good, but of course we haven't talked about the final option yet. Frankly, that's because it's almost too easy. And also because we've seen no hint of it in the 2 Marvel properties that show life post-blip. And also because it would prove me wrong, yeah. Monica Rambeau would be a unique case, like in the comics, and yet, despite WandaVision not introducing the first MCU mutant, it still would have starred her. Because Wanda and Pietro Maximoff gained powers when they were tampered with, using the power of an Infinity Stone. When Thanos snapped those big purple fingies, he used Infinity Stone power on half of the creatures in the known universe to erase them. And then Professor Hulkboy snapped them all back. Monica needed to go through the energy of the Hex 3 times before gaining powers. But couldn't it be the case that many people worldwide have already been changed in the MCU by being snapped away and brought back? Could mutants already be there? Walking amongst people? Waiting for somebody to perhaps open a school where these newfound powers and abilities will be accepted instead of feared? I think the first MCU mutant was in WandaVision, but I'm still undecided about whether it was Monica Rambeau or Wanda herself. Fortunately, Spider-Man No Way Home is being released later this year, and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness will be in theaters in about 380 days. So we don't have long to wait to see if either of these theories plays out. But for now, it's all a beautiful dream. And like the impressive burgeoning powers of Scarlet Witch, it's all movie magic. Thank you for checking out this video, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, you could drop a subscription, you can like the video, you could comment and tell me how dumb or how genius this theory was. And you know, you can like join the channel now. There's memberships, there's extra perks, I promise. Go on, click it, see what magic awaits beyond.